This is a lecture series for descendants of African American slaves that explains how European slave owners, and now their descendants, effectuate the perpetual social, economic, political, and moral subjugation and Jim Crow enslavement of African Americans through social engineering, government policies, and legislation. For example, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, that guarantees self-destructive family structures and the normalization of mental psychosis. Stay tuned, and let's start unveiling African American heritage together.
The Negro is the product of an American experience. And during this experience, Negroes developed certain characteristics and cultural practices which shaped and still do shape the way that they interact with the world. There's nothing wrong with having status, but what is it to a people to have all the status in the world, but have no standards to stand upon? And these people aid in perpetuating black culture because they have found a way to capitalize off of it. And also because they see blacks as being permanent victims who are incapable of being self-reliant, responsible, and independent people, as we'll see as we continue reading in the book, Black Rednecks and White Liberals by Dr. Thomas Sowell. When I'm talking about separating from black Americans, it doesn't have anything to do with the way that people look or a physical thing, but it has everything to do with what is represented by black as an identity, right? From the name black, which is linked to all sorts of derogatory ideas like gloomy, unlucky, evil, and wicked, to black culture and the way that many blacks interpret the world around them, which is largely optimized in a way to reflect the ideas that are contained within that name. And so these and other related aspects are what we have to separate from in the final phase of freedom. And the only way to do this is to go within and to conquer the enemy, which is an aspect of thyself, right? Because the enemy lives with you, it sleeps with you, it showers with you, it eats with you, it shops with you, you take it everywhere you go. But it is hidden so well within the person that most people don't have any clue that it's there. But as a person begins to do as you said in the comment, which is to pay attention and to reflect on their thoughts and their actions, then they can begin to spot the enemy when it rears its head. Because a person has to be able to recognize the enemy or the adversary before they're able to deal with it. And the only way to do this is by taking conscious inventory of your inner world. Every time you get into a situation where you act out of accordance with how you know you should ideally act, then you can take the time to make an honest reflection and then imagine yourself acting in line with how you ideally know you should act. And then practice actually acting that way in every opportunity that you get until it becomes a natural response. And what this means is that people have to take responsibility for the things that are within their own control. So for instance, if a person finds themselves to be an unnecessarily aggressive person, then they can do one of two things. Number one, they could recognize the enemy or the untrained emotion, and they can use the power from the great unknowable within to correct their character. Or number two, they can use that very same power to blame other people and to point the finger at other people for them reacting in the way that they do. Either way they go about it, they're using the power to do something, but the outcomes of these two things are very different. The outcome for number one develops into higher self-esteem and a higher level of confidence. And the outcome of number two develops into a lower self-esteem and the victim mentality. And it is the people who want to stay with the number two approach that we have to get away from, because what they're going to do is hinder the progress of the people who want to take the first approach of using the power within to better their character, community, their culture, and their life in general. And this is why the right community is very important, because when you get more and more people together who believe that they can actually use their power to better themselves and to better their situation, then what you create is a mass mind. And this mass mind is what fuels the people in the community, and it influences them to act according to those beliefs. And when you have this type of fire behind you, it actually takes less personal effort to make these character changes. But what happens when you're in a community or you're surrounded by people who don't believe in, or they don't care much about improving their character, their culture, their community, or their life condition? The mass mind from those people weighs down anyone who tries to improve themselves, because the person who's trying to rise up and improve themselves is acting against the mega energy current of the group, right? And it's pulling them down. And so when a person is presented with this situation, it becomes extremely difficult to break away from the human instincts to think and act like the group, even if the group thinks and acts against one's own best interest. And that's why people raised in certain environments with certain ways of thinking, they typically grow up to become a reflection of those thoughts and of that environment. People who grow up practicing a certain religion, they'll typically grow up and remain practicing that same religion. People who are raised around poor people and raised in a poor environment, they're typically going to grow up to be poor people. People who are raised around Democrats, they're typically going to grow up to become Democrats too. People who are raised in a group that says that it's everyone else's fault, they're typically going to grow up to express that same type of sentiment. That's because the human instinct to conform is a very powerful tool to influence behavior. And what we want to do with the Earthpoise community is leverage the immense power of that tool to guide people in the direction that leads to outcomes of unity with the right people, righteousness, prosperity in relationships, health and careers, optimism, which is having a positive outlook, intelligence, satisfaction with life in general, and also enlightenment. And so we want all these outcomes to be experienced by the adults and the future generation to come. And one of the foundations for achieving this is character development, which requires a constant monitoring of thoughts and actions and the intelligent use of the power from the innermost to make the necessary corrections to the character. And this takes practice. Understand, it takes a lot of practice, but it works. And it's the only way that someone's going to be able to change themselves if they desire to do so. You can't go to the store and buy a new character. And money from reparations is not going to fix a person's character either. All money is going to do is amplify whatever character that person has. An angry, irritated, and a hateful person with $20 is still going to be an angry, irritated, and hateful person with $200,000 of a reparations check. You see that? Now let's go on to the next part of your comment, which says this. This video also got me thinking more about community and preparing myself to be part of one. I never thought about life in a community sense because usually it's every man for himself, even sometimes with family. And that's true. This is part of what American culture has developed into. It's grounded in individualism and every person out for themselves. That's because the early European colonists who settled on the land, they brought that culture and that mindset over here with them. And this is just another example on how anyone with any skin color can take on any culture or any mindset. Because here in America, there are many people with all sorts of skin complexions that have this very same mindset. Some more than others, but a lot of people have it, right? And a lot of them, they don't know how to think in terms of a collective community where when I win, you win too. Or when you win, I win too. They can only think in terms where it's when I win, it's only I who win. Or when you win, it's only you who wins. So I've seen this attitude expressed in matters from money all the way up to matters of knowledge, where some people will go as far as keeping certain knowledge away from people that's supposed to be in their community because they believe that the people might come to know as much as them or more than them, and they might not need them anymore, right? They don't view the people in their community as potential partners. They view them as potential threats. So they see it as problematic for other people to start rising up with their knowledge, right? That's a completely different approach than an approach of a collective community where you want as many people to be as knowledgeable as possible and to be successful as possible in as many areas as possible so they can contribute to the community, right? They can bring that knowledge back. That approach right there, it incentivizes the community to collectively rise and win together, right? Together. You go on to say this, but now I do wonder what would someone like me bring to the table of a community like Earpoise. I don't have much in life right now to offer, but with informative videos like this and others on YouTube, I do feel a sense of striving for more and to do more, to do better. Now listen, if you have the right heart for the mission and the willingness to learn and to make improvements, then that right there is enough value to offer, right? Because a person who's going to become part of the Earpoise people, they're going to need a lot of heart because the expectations are high, right? It's not some low expectation thing. They're high. And that alone is enough to weed out people whose heart is not really there, because you're going to need that. And so the right heart is number one. And on top of that, I'm most certain that you have something that you're good at, because everyone is good at something, right? It's just that people, what they tend to do is they tend to minimize or they tend to underestimate what it is that they're good at. And so there's something that you do a lot of the time, or there's something that you have been doing for a long time that you've become good at. And this goes for everyone that's out there listening. You have a certain amount of time that you're awake, and you have to make choices and do something during that time. And so whatever it is that you're doing repeatedly during those hours that you're awake, you've become good at. So what you have to do is take inventory of the things that you do so you can find out what it is that you're good at. It could be something as simple as being organized at work, right? You could take that skill and you can apply it to organize other things for a community. It could be other things like designing clothes, artwork, video editing, journalism, trades, landscaping. One of the skills that's very valuable to a physical community is having skilled landscapers to keep the neighborhood looking good. You have to have that. And as a community, we would love to pay Earpoise landscapers to do that. Cooking is another skill because we need restaurants to serve the Earpoise food. Doctors, real estate agents, bankers, data analysts, teachers, professors, daycare workers, horticulturalists, entrepreneurs, musicians, photographers, videographers, volunteers, and so much more that was not included in this list. And so if you still feel like you don't have anything to offer, then the beautiful thing about being a human is that anyone could learn any skill that they desire to learn. The only thing that'll stop you from learning anything today is you, which goes back to the discussion about the enemy within, right? Next thing you know, the mind will start presenting you with the most elaborate excuses on why you can't learn something new. You're too old, you're not smart enough, or you don't have the right skin color, and many more elaborate excuses that it'll come up with. And your job is to be able to subdue the enemy so you can do what it is that you need to do in order to be successful. And this here takes heart. And I can't tell you how many times that I've seen people who I knew for certain had a lot of potential to be very good at a particular thing, but they didn't believe in themselves, right? They talked themselves out of doing it because they didn't believe in themselves. And the one thing that we do not want to happen is to grow old and to hold company with the three tormentors called shoulda, woulda, coulda. So understand that everyone has doubts, but what makes the difference is how people deal with those doubts. Some people conquer them, and there's other people who get conquered by them and taken down into the pit. And it all depends on how they make use of the power that's within. And so you finish saying this. So thanks again, Mr. Michael, for taking the time to answer my question. I look forward to more videos on Earpoise culture and its development, as well as more on your commentaries on various books. Good work and keep teaching. And so thanks again, Frederick, for your questions and your comments. We most certainly appreciate them. And anyone else who has questions or comments, just be sure to leave them down below. And so I want to thank everyone out there for watching all the way until the end. My name is Brooklyn St. Michael, and I'll see you in the free world.